Hey, it's Big T. Today I'm going to tie a dry fly that is a variation of Blake Boyd's Puff Daddy. I call it the MacDaddy. I'm going to start with a size 10 wide gap barbless dry fly hook. This is one of my favorite hooks that I carry in my store. It's great not only for dry flies, but I'll use this on other nymphs such as mops, a few other things where I want to take advantage of the wider gap on that. This is a 70 denier Danville thread, and I'm just going to wrap that back on the hook shank right to the bend. This is in a dark olive, and then I'm going to take an olive CDC feather and try and get one that's a little bit longer. And I'm going to tie this in by the tip, and I'm just going to trap a couple of the fibers back there and then wrap my thread forward. This is going to be the most delicate part of the tie right here, is the initial wraps with that CDC feather. It is easy to break that, so when we're making the first couple turns, and I'm going to use some hackle pliers to do this. First thing I want to do is kind of preen those fibers backwards. I'm going to be real gentle working around that hook point, preening my fibers back, and also kind of picking them out as I make that turn around the hook point. Once I get to this point, I want to pull a few of these fibers out so they don't get trapped and they actually push back and flare back. Once we have a couple wraps done, the stem of the feathers becomes stronger and we don't have to be as conscientious about making gentle wraps around. So we're just going to hackle that around. This is a great fly on its own, tied down even as small as an 18, but it also makes a great fly for a dry dropper. Alright, so I'm going to trap that stem in and trim it out. Okay, so you can see at this point we're about halfway up the shank. Maybe not even quite that far. And I really want us to be close to the 2/3 area. I've talked in the past about contrasts and how I like contrasts in my fly. So instead of tying in another similar color, I'm going to go right to a dark black CDC feather and tie that in and start wrapping with that. Ultimately, I'd like to end up approximately 2/3 up the hook shank with my CDC. Oh, that's what I was talking about with the delicate start. Now, that might mean you use 3 feathers. It might mean 4, depending on the length, as well as how thick and dense of fibers you have on that feather. Alright, so we're going to continue to wrap the black up our hook shank. Picking out any fibers that we feel like are getting trapped along the way. And that puts me just about where I want to be. If you've got fibers that are sticking forward and every which way, you can take your half hitch tool and just take that and press back slightly to maneuver and push those backwards. At this point, I'm going to create some antennas, and what I'm going to use is a turkey biot quill. These feathers are dual purpose. You've got the actual biot on this side, and that's going to be for your traditional prince nymphs. Heck, I like using the biot as body wraps. It creates a great segmented look. Go ahead and wrap the body. And the nice thing about these turkey biots versus goose is they are a lot longer if you are using them for bodies on dries or nymphs. The other side, these longer fibers are good for tailing materials, and in this case I'm going to use them for antenna. So we're going to cut a couple of these off, and I'm going to lay them to the side, try and tie it into the side of the hook shank, and that may require a couple of adjustments. And have them stick out approximately the length of the hook. And I meant to note while I'm doing this, for those of you who don't fish CDC frequently, it's a great buoyant feather, but do know it requires a little bit different type of dressing. So if you're one that likes the gank or something like that, that generally is going to clog that feather up, and it's not going to be effective. Loon makes a product called Loksha oil, which is a great dressing for CDC feathers. So you may want to consider that. And then your traditional dry powdery shake type will work as well. So we've got our antenna in, we've got our CDC wrap. The last thing I'm going to do, or one of the last things, I need to trim this booger off, is I'm going to come back at this point in time, and I'm actually going to tie in a hackle in the front. Like any fly, this is a situation where you can play around with colors. I think they call this badger, but it's got a black core, tan exterior on the feather. Go ahead and get my hackle pliers, get a little bit better grip on that. Not using the rotary feature today. I'm used to playing around with that, but I thought I'd change it up. It's not something I like to use with the CDC. So I'm going to come back and make a nice thick hackle here. And then come over top and trap that feather down with a couple wraps. And then forward. Once I've done that, I'm going to trim that out. And one of the things I like to do when I'm trimming out a feather like this, so that I don't take out a bunch of the hackles that I've just tied in, is I'll take my scissors around the feather and then close them, not to the point where I am going to cut it, but really close, and then slide down. When I slide down like that, I'm avoiding cutting the fibers. And the last thing we're going to want to do is whip finish, and try and whip finish around these antennae. is it, other than one final step. You may want to take these CDC fibers and pinch them off at the back. This will fish great. Change your color variations up depending on what bugs are hatching in the area. It will float a lot of weight, and I think you'll find to be one that you want to have in your fly box. I hope you enjoyed this. Please subscribe to my channel. And for these materials and more, please visit my store. Thanks so much.